So we're learning that on Friday there were shots fired at the Timcast IRL studio at the compound in their property out in the boonies, as they call it, where, this has been going on for years, where they've been terrorized by these people with doxing, swattings even were a big problem, which I think, if I recall correctly, Tim mentioned even compelled them to relocate from their previous property where they had their old studio set up. And this has been a thing, I've been out there before. They've got security teams, like they're very aware of this problem. And obviously with the recent escalations from the left, they're aware of the consequences that it can bring if it's not taken seriously. But this would represent kind of a new peak in that trend, where now there are actually people on their property who are literally shooting at the studio, shooting at the house. And thank God they weren't there at the time, and their security was able to more or less handle the situation and just text them, hey, there was an incident, we handled it. But, this is happening to Tim Pool, who Tim's a good guy, nice guy, but Tim's own audience will tell you, like, this guy is not exactly taking, like, hardline positions on things. And that's fine. They're his positions. It's his show. He can say whatever he wants. But this is not exactly a guy who's like, an ideologue representing some kind of like ideological challenge to organized leftism. I mean, he is very much, anti-war. He's pro-free speech. Like, those positions in and of themselves, I suppose, are representing a threat. And as we'll discuss momentarily, like, these people literally define like evil as anything that is in opposition to their organized global like leftist libtard agenda. So that's fine. But from my perspective or your perspective, we may be scratching our heads where it's like, okay, if it's coming after Tim Pool now, I mean, like, really, what is wrong with these people? How would we address this? And so that's the thing. Tim Pool would be considered like, a moderate. He's like one of these like disaffected, Occupy Wall Street liberals who saw that the left went too far. And so now he runs a show, obviously, where he has conversations, ideas. I've been on it before. I'll be going on it again shortly. So that's great. That's fine. But it's interesting that, it is the people who are trying to have these conversations and who attract a mass audience of people who perhaps with good intentions want to believe that we can converse our way out of this, and therefore we can see these discussions, maybe even participate in these discussions, and eventually we can sort of talk our way out of this whole situation and cooler heads can prevail. I, unfortunately, am not so optimistic these days, and I would even extend that to our more moderate friends on the left, so you may say. I had this conversation around Thanksgiving with some friends, with some family members. Again, maybe I'm a bit too cynical these days. Maybe I'm just in being so. But if you look at like the way the American political system works, we have a two-party system, right? You can vote for Republicans, you can vote for Democrats. Well, I could vote for Libertarians, you can vote for Republicans, or you can vote for Democrats. You have two choices. Or you can opt out. Fine. You can say that neither of these two parties are representing my interests enough for me to want to give the extent of my political participation, which is voting, assuming you're not working in organized politics, you're not running for office. You have a vote. That is the extent by which you participate in American politics. For most people, I think like 50% of people don't even do that much. But for people who are, quote unquote, politically involved, that is what they do. They cast a vote, literally saying one of these two parties is a closer approximation of what I want the world to look like than the other. And if neither are the case, neither are quite doing it for you, you can opt out. And that's perfectly fine. That's your prerogative. Maybe I would make the argument that opting out is itself making a choice, since that is, literally speaking, one less vote that the opposing party would need to win. So, I am a lesser of two evils guy, even though I don't even concede that the Republican Party in its present state is evil. I think we're making great progress. But, like, I would make that argument where it's like, the Republican Party isn't perfect. Okay, but if you abstain your vote, now it is that much easier, however marginally, for Democrats to win. So in a way, like, you're just helping them, which you would claim you would not want to be doing. But anyway, when we see like our Democrat friends or whatever, moderate, when they are still at this point in 2025 willing to support that party, they may be like Bill Maher. They may be these people who are like, I don't agree with all the crazy stuff, and I'm one of the crazy ones who actually thinks we can still talk to people and have ideas. Bill Maher's made a career out of that for like, 30 years or something? Okay, you are still a Democrat. You are still like associating with these people. You are still a slave to their permission structures. You are not willing to step on their toes. The only thing that you will say, which they would maybe roll their eyes at, is that I think we should talk to those people who are crazy. Okay, do you actually like agree with any of their positions? Are you going to treat them with respect? I mean, yeah, you'll have them on your show or whatever, but you still denigrate them, you condescend them, you do all that. And then it gives permission to people who are like you, still voting Democrat, still pretty much willing to go along with all the radical stuff, but they just disagree with the excesses of the environment that they've allowed to metastasize politically, which, like, okay, dude. So, yeah, I have a very sort of like boomer vindicated position, which is that I don't think that the innocent Democrat is even something that we can conceive. I don't think it's possible to believe at this point. If you are seeing not even anything that's been going on politically in the last 7 years that we've discussed at length on this program pertaining to common sense issues, whether it's immigration, abuse of children, whatever you would like it to be. If it is now at the point where mainstream Democrat media is inciting and celebrating the attempted assassination of the more moderate people on the right, and you are still willing to align yourself with that party, maybe you don't agree with all of it, but it is a closer approximation to what you would like the world to be like, and it's actually better than associating with those people over there, those Republicans, because you think those ideas are uneducated, low status, whatever it may be. And so you are still very comfortable on the side that has become so radical, that is, again, inciting and celebrating assassination attempts. And it's not just like alt media. They don't even have alt media. They just are the media. Their alt media is just media that's not legacy, right? Like the streamer class. Destiny, Hassan, these people do the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's MSNBC, if it's Twitch, Kick, whatever. It is all the same thing. Their job, why they are paid so much, despite in many cases low viewership, is because their job is to rhetorically lockpick their mass audience of insane libtards, hoping that one of them does something insane, does something bad and evil to a conservative. So then that can be sort of written off. It can be justified. It can be, well, maybe he shouldn't have said XYZ. He didn't say XYZ. Well, we played it out of context, so I guess he kind of did, right? So, yeah, I understand that unity is very popular. It's very easy. It's very easy to go and be like Marjorie Taylor Greene and go on CNN and say, can we please be unified? Please leave me alone. Please don't treat me like Charlie Kirk. Is that what you really want from me, John Doyle on Twitter? You want me to be assassinated like Charlie Kirk? No, obviously no one wants that. But we are counting on people like her to forward the agenda to represent the interests of patriots. And the second it gets a little hot, you're going to turn around and desert the cause, go grovel into the arms of the enemy and say, I'm sorry for my participation in toxic politics. What, because you talked about Jewish space lasers? That's hilarious. If anything, we need more of that. It's not toxic. They're the toxic ones. And you know that. You of anyone should know that. But you apologize because you're scared. And you see what happens to Charlie Kirk or to Tim Pool. I'm sure you've gotten your own fair share of death threats. The point being, calling for unity is something you do when there's sort of like an equal playing field, right? And you don't want to just totally destroy each other. You actually can't call for unity if you're the one who's on the back foot, if you are the one with little to no representation, if you are the one who's being attacked and killed, and that is not enough to prevent people from winning office, from being the highest law enforcement officer in a state, or to keeping their shows on primetime television, that kind of behavior. So that's not calling for unity. That is surrendering. That is waving the white flag. That is cucking. And so I have no patience for it. I have no patience for the innocent Democrat hypothesis. I have no patience for calling for unity, which, by the way, is not me calling for further division. Any opposition I have to these people is like in physics, where it's an equal force being applied to an object. Absent the force on me, I don't care. Do your thing. But any opposition I have to these people is only because I have to. We have to defend ourselves. We cannot surrender. We can't wave the white flag. And so when I say I don't believe in unity, that's not because like I want those Democrats who are, your moderate types to like go to jail or something. I don't hold them morally accountable. I acknowledge that they are NPCs and that it's really not their fault that they believe those things. People are sheep. What are you going to do? However, it is the fault of the people who have put those ideas into their head, who have turned your family members against you, your coworkers against you, made it so you don't feel safe in expressing normal opinions without being socially ostracized, without potentially being physically assaulted, assassinated, and then having all of those things celebrated behind your back, either because you are no longer welcome in these environments or because you're literally dead. Those people need to be held accountable. Those people are the ones who are dividing, who are making unity impossible. Unity is good when we're like siblings, right? We're beating the crap out of each other, and it's like, okay, at the end of the day, we're siblings, right? We can't do this. We're all family. What happens if you're not, though? What happens if I don't owe you anything, you don't owe me anything? We're just opposed, and it's going to be me and it's going to be you. Can you call for unity at that point if you don't have a kind of shared umbrella holding you together because it's been disintegrated from the top down by evil, bad people? Those are the people I'm talking about. I want no unity with those people, no quarter for those people. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the mechanics of why those people need to go. But calling for unity is not done like it's the end of the American Civil War, right? where you call for unity because the country needs it. We need to come together. Right now, we are not in a position to call for unity. We have not won the war. Anyone calling for unity right now is looking for a parachute. They're looking to get off. They want a lifeboat. They realize that this is real. This is a real thing with real consequences. So I don't buy that. And again, when I'm calling for anti-unity, it's not because I want division. I am simply saying the people who are actually responsible for the breakdown of our political climate, of unity, American identity, those are the people who need to be held accountable because they are making the rest of the political project and the rest of what we would understand and love about American society to be impossible. So we will discuss that. We'll discuss a lot of things. We will discuss sort of how to deal with these people, what their motivations are, the mechanics of it, all that. So yeah, do stay tuned. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the John Doyle Show. Before we jump in, I have to give you some health advice, which is that you need to be drinking alcohol. What do you think built Rome in a day? It wasn't weed and stuff like that. It was alcohol. That's why you need to go get Flying Ace bourbon. It chases legacy, you know, like Rome, because it's straight bourbon the way it was meant to be, like when they invented bourbon in Rome. It's bold, it's balanced, it's unapologetically American. America being an outgrowth of the Roman Empire. Sorry, Italians. There's no gimmicks, no fluff. It's just real whiskey made for those who still believe in hard work, in high standards. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, it's time to level up. You can buy online. Isn't that fantastic? You go to flyingacespirits.com, use code BLAZE for free shipping. So we're talking about the Tim Pool shooting. We're talking about the history of doxing, you know, how it's literally like Tim Pool. He's like, you know, again, This is not my belief. I like the guy, and I'm not saying this to, you know, like, attack him or anything. I am repeating the opinion of his audience. Like, you ever watch his show live? His audience is like, Tim, stop interrupting your guest. Tim, take a position on something. And so it's like all of these, you know, represented opinions. You've got like a far right guy. You've got a base black guy. You've got some femoid. And then you've got Tim there just trying to like play the orchestra, right? So his own audience would call him like a moderate. He plays the orchestra, right? He doesn't really take maybe as many positions as he does sort of facilitate conversation, and that's great. We need that. We are pro-conversation. I am simply using this to say, if the guys, again, as we saw maybe with the Charlie Kirk instance, the guys who are facilitating conversation, which, by the way, is the last sort of off-ramp, right? That is the dying plea of the patriot is, can we please just talk this out? Can we please, because we don't want to have to do things that are maybe not so great. We just want to talk. We can fix this through discourse or whatever. As opposed to just like crushing these people into the ground, which frankly is like what we need to do. It's just basic game theory. The way that they're treating us, we have to meet that proportionally, right? Their escalations being like actual assassinations, violence. Our escalations, very legally and very coolly, need to match that in terms of efforts of law enforcement to go after these people and crush them into the ground. And by the way, not just like the street organizers, the people in the media. The street organizers are responding to social incentives that are created by the media. They would not just organize themselves. They're actually like very unproductive and miserable people that usually don't leave their houses except to go to these like wholesome chungus, like, you know, kill normal white Christian kinds of events. So yeah, they are responding. That's why it's not enough to just like, you know, break up these kind of, you know, on the street organizations or things of that nature. You have to destroy the social incentive, which is causing people to go seek those organizations out in the first place, which is created by legacy media, created by alt-left media, your dirtbag leftist, Hassan Piker, your streamer class. They have the same job. It's reaching different demographics, different generations. The job is exactly the same in description. And so that's why we can't just limit it to, you know, going after leftists who are on the street, rioting, people doing things like that. And the actions thus far haven't limited it to that, which is very good. But you have to go after everybody, you know, all of these like left-wing activists, organizers, because the terrorism itself entails a lot more than just like the on the street and rioting. And the Trump admin has done that. I mean, it's listed, you know, organized doxing campaigns, swatting, rioting, looting, trespassing, assault, destruction of property, threats of civil violence, civil disorder as all priorities for law enforcement to investigate. And this is also critically important because Antifa does have an active online presence, which they've been able to enjoy because no one ever held them accountable. So they would literally have like, you know, Portland Antifa Twitter accounts, Rose City Antifa, John Brown Gun Club, like all these like gay organizations, and they would be online organizing things like doxing, organizing things like swatting. So it's not enough to go after them when they riot, when they, take it there publicly, because again, they have never had to be accountable. You need to adopt a sort of holistic strategy to counter all of Antifa's operations. And that's what they are. We must name them. They are Antifa. They are a group. And they do this thing where they pretend like, Antifa doesn't actually exist. It's just like a freaking idea or whatever. It like definitely exists. Like it is actually a completely real thing. You're just being dishonest, which, again, like we don't have to entertain dishonesty. We know it's true. So who cares what you think? And it is true that, yes, like Antifa does refer to an ideology, but they leave out this like obvious fact that the ideology is what fuels the creation of these radical left-wing organizations. So it's not a stretch to look at terrorist organizations calling themselves like, Portland's Rose City Antifa and be like, okay, I think that these organizations are real. They may be motivated by this ideology, this idea, but the organization itself is real. So the fact that it's not like one single organization doesn't actually matter. It's an umbrella term that applies to all of these organizations that subscribe to this ideology, this very deranged ideology. Okay, well, what is the ideology? Shall we do a little intellectual genealogy? Like baby boomers, if you read Rules for Radicals, if you read The Truth About Marxism, then we can beat these people in the marketplace of ideas. What does Antifa mean on a conceptual level? Okay, the surface level understanding of Antifa, the one that like these people want you to accept uncritically, is that it's about nothing more than opposing fascism. As you may have picked up on, given that it is Antifa. What do you think the fa means in Antifa? You gotta learn to listen about these things. And of course, what good red-blooded American would ever take issue with fighting the same ideology that their grandparents defeated in World War II? It's tough to argue that position. The problem is that the term fascism has been completely uprooted, deracinated, write that down, deracinated from its historical context, because it used to refer to, an ideology motivating regimes like fascist Italy, Nazi Germany. Now it refers to anything that the left dislikes. Like if you want to talk about a model of political management tied to cultural and national regeneration, that's one thing. That's a particular thing. We can like have that conversation. But in practice, all this means is against the left. It is not a real word. Real words have to have like particular definitions that apply to particular things, not just used as a sort of like shutdown whenever the opposing idea is something that you feel threatened by or that you're annoyed by. It's the same way that racist is not a real word. Like when people use the word racist, they think they're describing something that exists in the real world, but it doesn't. They will use racist to describe something that maybe is prejudiced. Okay, but those are actually completely different words. Being prejudiced is being prejudicial, right? I am judging prior to knowing. If I grow up around, I don't know, certain groups of people, I know them quite well. I'm not being prejudicial. I'm actually judging based on, my own intuition, my own deductive reasoning. But they would call instances of those observations racist. And their definition of racism is, power plus prejudice. So, okay, already it's wrong. But they would just say, bigotry, we have a word for that. Intolerance, we have a word for that. Racist literally means this pathological desire that you have because you're evil to judge people because they freaking look different than you. Except every time they use the word racist, literally what it is describing is not instances of that. That does not actually seem to exist. It does not map out into the real world. But because that is such a bad word, it's such a taboo, they control not only the invention of the word, but its enforcement. They can liberally apply it and get you in trouble professionally, socially, what have you, if you step out of line. So these are not actually real words. And not only are they not real words, they require them to not be real words, whether it's fascism, racism, things that do not actually exist, these opaque, just non-concepts that can, because again, they are so undefined and so opaque, they can be applied by the people who enforce these terms, leftists, to people who step out of line to make them face consequences for deviating from, the mainstream consensus on dealing with like freaking evil people or whatever. So yeah, fascism is the same thing. It's evolved into this like code word for genocide that is associated with just like insensitive attitudes. That's all it means. That was the whole point of the authoritarian personality, the whole Berkeley thing, this effort to try to figure out what kind of person becomes an authoritarian, which is to say someone who's like a normal American. And literally what they found out is that people who are raised in households that agree with the idea of morality, that agree with the idea of like a nuclear family with Christian morality, with traditional gender roles, which is to say like just normal human behavior, that is the type of person who would tend to be an authoritarian. Therefore, we must justify the complete uprooting of all traditional American standards on like literally everything that we would impart into children as they're going through the American public school system. And we must update it with this new really cool idea we had with the authoritarian personality, which is to say that now when we teach students things, we must teach them things that would make them unsympathetic to that kind of authoritarianism, which is, again, to say normal white American Christian morality, normal understanding of how society ought to be conducted. We must completely just like muddy those waters in the mind of the young American student, because what if they become an authoritarian? Authoritarian literally just means like someone who wants to impose their will upon society, someone who thinks that things should probably be like a certain way. They're authoritarian. They obviously have a project. They have a will that they would like to impart upon us. It just so happens that theirs is like evil and backwards and disturbed, and ours is like normal and natural. So again, it's just basic game theory, but that's why they love to like, uproot everything. That's all they can do is deconstruct, pick things apart. That's why they love to decontextualize the word, pretend that, American soldiers in the Second World War were Antifa, as if these heroes, these patriots were in any way similar to these like dysgenic transgender freaks rioting outside ICE facilities because they hate America. It's just like completely ridiculous. In reality, it's not about fighting fascism, which does not exist in today's world. It is about destroying what remains of historic America to usher in gay race communism. That's how it exists now. That's how it existed in the 1950s, in the era of the authoritarian freaking personality. It's anti-Christian, it's anti-traditional sexual morality, it's anti-borders, it's anti-white, it's anti-family. Like, they hate the foundations of not only America, but all of Western civilization entirely. It is an inherently violent ideology because you cannot convince people to support their own uprooting and their own displacement and their own degeneration without this like implicit threat of violence. And unlike some on the left, like moderate liberals who might sincerely believe in and practice the kind of like peaceful protests or whatever, Antifa openly believes like the threat of freaking fascism is so great that it must be stopped by any means necessary, which usually translates to attacking Trump supporters with bricks, blowing up cop cars, intimidating people in black bloc, And as we mentioned, though, in the beginning, these moderate liberals who maybe don't support these kinds of measures, I don't want to let them off the hook here, because most like left of center aren't Antifa, sure, but even the most peaceful liberal is still happy to be like on the same team as the black bloc terrorist, as the person harassing these kinds of like normal white American Christians, because ultimately they share the same worldview. What they want the world to look like is identical. It's just the means are in disagreement, just differences of opinion there. They both agree completely that America is something shameful, and that for America to have any moral worth, it has to be radically restructured, or maybe better, just destroyed altogether. So their main disagreement, insofar as they even have one, it's just tactical. The moderate liberal believes that nonviolence is more effective to implement gay race communism because of freaking MLK. He was nonviolent. And then the far left anarchist believes that violence is the only suitable means, likewise, because they're a student of MLK and they're just getting their wires crossed about what that guy was actually all about. So when you see like a normal looking libtard peacefully protesting against Trump, just understand that you are not looking at like a little rabbit. You are looking at like somebody who fundamentally agrees with the person who's like brandishing a rifle in front of your children trying to scare you. So, and you saw plenty of that too. These supposedly moderate liberals, right? One of the good ones, cheering on the assassination of Charlie Kirk. These were not card-carrying Antifa members. They were not following Rose City Antifa, Elm Fork, John Brown freaking gun club. These were supposedly normal people, right? By all appearances. They didn't even look like the Andy No mug shots. These sort of like dysgenic Antifa militants, right? They look like normal people. But despite that outward appearance of like normality, they were still finding themselves celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder, weren't they? Alongside these Antifa comrades, right? And so that just reveals the extent of like the left-wing rot in America, because it's not just the radicals who think that a law-abiding, well-to-do family man should have his neck explode in 4K simply for voicing conservative beliefs. It's the moderates too, actually. The fact that they may disagree on like universal health care, supply-side economics, it's ultimately not important. It is ornamental, it is auxiliary at best. And that's a horrifying thought. I don't blame people for wanting to maybe just try unity a little bit harder. It's a scary thought to think about what could happen to you and your family and how your neighbors, people you've known for maybe decades, would be indifferent or maybe even would celebrate that. But thanks to decades of left-wing indoctrination, not just, again, in the universities, but in the K-12 education system, popular culture, all of which informed by the freaking authoritarian personality, which we talked about 5 years ago, this is the world that we live in. Like, this is the reality of your country, of your social fabric, because of these people imposing this upon us from the top down. So as young Americans, we can honestly say that, we didn't create any of this. It's not our fault. It's what we've inherited. But politics, much like life itself, right? It's about playing the hand you've been dealt, no matter how bad it is. And I don't want to sugarcoat it. Like, we've been dealt a pretty interesting hand here, right? We're going to play it, though, and we're going to play it as best we can because we have to win, because the stakes are too high. We have too much to lose. And there's no way that we can do that without dismantling the institutions that are controlled by the left, Antifa included, as an institution. And while the Trump administration isn't quite firing on all cylinders with this yet, this would be huge. And, as I've talked about on Twitter, designating Antifa a domestic terrorist organization doesn't allow the government to now do things that it was previously unable to do. The foreign terrorist organization designation, however, is a much different ballgame, because once an organization is determined to be a foreign terrorist organization, it instantly becomes like a federal crime to provide material support to it, to its members. People could face up to 20 years in prison for providing Antifa with money, training, lodging, freaking safe houses, advice. Can you imagine that? Like, some rich libtard is like funneling money to these people, like to these Antifa people or whatever, and then they just like wind up in prison. Isn't that what we're fighting for? Justice, the way that they were doing this in the 1970s, is like rich libtards are funding the like 1970s version of like leftist terrorists, these leftist terrorists never facing prison, actually retiring to like academia, positions of power. Okay, how about you go to jail now, actually? How about you go to prison forever? How about we put you under the jail, and then on top of the jail, we put a statue of Stephen Miller or something? A country where funding left-wing terrorism carries severe consequences. Can you imagine? That's why it's so important. It would even allow the Treasury Department to seize assets. Oh, hey, you're like a left-wing terrorist who's attacked, I don't know, countless Trump supporters, intimidated law enforcement, all in public. Congrats. Scott Bessent has all your money now. Good luck paying for your gender transit. Good luck getting your HRT. Hey, I'll give you some of my supply if I don't need it. If Trump doesn't betray me and I have to troon out again, maybe I'll cut you in on some of mine. So yeah, branding Antifa itself a foreign terrorist organization is going to allow the Trump administration to more easily investigate and surveil these groups. And you've been seeing good stuff with this recently. I mean, you've got some of these cells that have been designated as such. All of a sudden, it's creating problems for NGOs, for these middlemen, people financing it, things like that. I mean, again, you just show these people a little bit of teeth, you take the gloves off for 5 seconds, and the paper tiger crumbles immediately. You would be able to take the gloves off, as you do for, other terrorist organizations like ISIS, except Antifa's even worse. Whether Trump pursues this strategy completely, really takes the gloves off, it remains to be seen. I'm optimistic, and I'm praying that he will. I'm trusting the plan, and it's entirely justified, because Antifa is an international phenomenon. Antifa in America coordinates with Antifa in other countries, particularly those in Europe. You saw that video of that one guy who, when this happened, immediately fled, and he got confronted by some Swedish patriot because he had like a safe house there. So yeah, when things get too hot here, Antifa terrorists will flee to other countries. And I would bet something pretty significant that the funding for these left-wing terrorist organizations would flow across borders. And again, it could be like easily tracked when it does, because you would give law enforcement permission to simply do its job. So yeah, simply put, designating Antifa a foreign terrorist organization cripples their ability to operate, which is good for patriots. That would be the single biggest blow to the left in living memory. But, the bar, it's pretty high, I guess. We don't really fight those people very much. But now we do. Now we do. No need to be sad. Now we do. It would invite a lot of legal challenges that would be more sophisticated in going after them than, usually would have been the case, insofar as like we would ever go after them at all in like administrations past or whatever. And so anyway, that's not to say that Trump should not try doing that. He absolutely should. He needs to throw everything that he can at these people, these like literal communist terrorists. I'm just saying that, temper your expectations a little bit, because even if the administration opts to completely go balls to the wall FTO, like that is going to be an uphill battle. It's not like they left this flank open and then if we just like wave a magic wand, all of a sudden like the freaking Death Star explodes. Like they have, again, every institution that's relevant except for like maybe law enforcement unions, and right now like the White House. Like they are very well fortified, and so I wouldn't hold your breath. But on the other hand, uphill battles tend to be where Trump shines. Like that is what MAGA is about. It's doing what it takes to reverse America's decline, whatever the odds may be. It's been 10 years since the descent from the golden escalator. That has been a decade now of Trump dominating American politics. Few thought he would even win in 2016. Even fewer in 2021 thought he would come back to win again in 2024. I was one of the few. It is what it is. Now, all that being said, it pains me to say that Trump probably won't be around forever. The 2028 Republican primary probably will decide who succeeds him, unless he goes for it again, which, I'll support. But, Vance, for example, he appears to be in the best position to be his successor. It's not guaranteed that he's going to win. He may not win the nomination. He may not win the general election. It's not knocking Vance. He's an extraordinary guy. I'm just saying anything can happen. We cannot rest on our laurels. We have to work tirelessly to keep this momentum going after Trump, because if the left regains power, as we discussed last week, it's going to get ugly. The crackdown that we would see under a President Newsom would be catastrophic, to say the least. And that is why for the remainder of Trump's second term, the right has to remain laser focused on one thing above all else: power. I know that's a scary word. It's one thing to win on the issues, to win the debate. But you see what happens when you only win the debate. You only focus on having the debate. Pretty soon they get a lot of power, and they sort of decide that the debate is kind of annoying, actually, and they would prefer to just delete it from the public space. So I understand that we want to have the debate. We want to win on the issues. We want to even execute on the issues. We want to secure the border. We want to deport illegals. We want to ban anti-white discrimination, and we're making good progress. But all of those wins can and will be reversed if and when the left gets back into power. Biden spent his first week in office undoing what limited good Trump was able to achieve during his first term. And then, what did he do? Did he sit on his hands? No, he launches the biggest investigation in the history of the FBI into Trump supporters, into Trump's allies. And because Trump 47, Trump 2.0, has, again, even 12 months in, been far more successful than the first Trump administration, the left is angrier, the nose is bloody, we are wounding what we maybe will not be able to kill, and he's doing more damage to the regime in the first, year of his second administration than he did during 4 years in his first administration. And that's great, but it's not enough. It is not enough. We have to ensure that these people are crippled like America, except now it's them. So even if they return to power, it would be more difficult for them to seek vengeance. They would spend their first year trying to patch holes in the ship, get water out. They would not be able to just immediately get back on the horse, right? We have to gut the deep state. We need more mass firings of government bureaucrats. We need to go after the universities. We need left-wing judges, left-wing prosecutors, left-wing media figures. Everybody responsible for weaponizing the system, the government, against Trump, against his supporters, against patriots, normal Americans. We have to go after all of these people. And we also have to go after left-wing terrorist networks and everybody responsible for funding them. So, yeah, it was providential that we won, literally, once-in-a-generation opportunity to rectify certain inequities, rectify decades of hostile governance. That's true, but that's only the first step, right? No matter what it takes, these people are violent, they are freaks, they are terrorists, and they have to be brought to justice, because there's no future for our country if they are not brought to justice. Because as these cases are demonstrating, this is not even a matter of strategy. This is not even my opinion or whatever. Literally, at least, it is a matter of survival that this happens. We need to have balls. It's time to get tough. Time to get tough. Our escalations should be proportionate to theirs, except very legally and very coolly, because they're shooting at our guys. Okay, so we're imprisoning theirs for maybe organizing and inciting the shooting of our guys. It's actually not insane. It's not unreasonable at all. We have the mandate. People support this. The public likes this. So we just have to do it, because otherwise all we're doing is signaling to them, hey, that thing that you've been fantasizing about doing for literally ever? Well, hey, yeah, you can actually just do it and there won't be consequence. Rewards, actually. There will literally be social rewards for you in doing so. And then you can get back into power and just keep doing it anyway. Yeah, those are very bad incentives for patriots, and they have to be corrected yesterday. So, speaking of the calendar, Christmas is here. Time for the annual tradition of pretending we didn't wait until the last minute to buy gifts. It's called delayed gratification. So if you're going to go ahead and do the whole socks and underwear thing, literally half of America does, real stat, by the way, at least give them something that doesn't suck. That's where our cool friends over at Undertac come in. Tactical, ultra comfortable underwear designed with input from real special forces guys who tested them in Africa. Ooh, right? If it performs while you're getting shot at, it'll perform while you're arguing with leftist relatives who may also shoot at you. They're insanely soft, 50% more moisture wicking than cotton. They're antibacterial, and they even have a hidden escape and evasion pocket for all of your escape and evasion needs. It's really fantastic. So go to undertac.com and use offer code Doyle25 for 25% off this holiday season only. It's never coming back. And by the way, they don't stop at underwear. You can check out their American-made socks, EDC t-shirts, the women's line for the 7%er in your life, hoodies, joggers, all built for comfort, durability, for people who don't want to shop from brands that hate them. So go to undertac.com. That is undertac.com, code Doyle25 for a special 25% off. Your gift shopping done. You can go back to watching my content, whatever. Mission complete. You don't have to worry about it. Undertac.com, Doyle25. Christmas. Yes. So I guess this video has been going around. It's a scene from a recent slasher, modern slasher called like Silent Night or something. And I guess they tried this like really bold and ambitious thing where they had Santa Claus like kill a freaking Nazi or something in the movie. And it was like freaking epic. So take a look at this and then we will react to it.
We shouldn't have to feel shame for what we believe, for wanting a better America for our children. No. Tonight, we remind ourselves that Christmas is still a white Christian holiday that no one can take away from us. So, grab a drink, make out with someone under the mistletoe, and have some fun.
Okay, so what are we thinking? Stakeout? Wait for you to use the John?
No, this is like a really betraying insight into like leftist psychology where it's like nobody actually says those words. This media is not meant to like say anything about the world. This media is meant to congratulate like dysgenic spurgs for feeling this like schizophrenic desire to literally kill people who express sentiments such as, you know, hey, Christmas is good. America likes Christmas. Haha, yeah. Hey, we shouldn't be ashamed to have like an American society. Like, but then of course she's like next to a swastika, because if she were just saying words like, hey, America's good, Christmas is good, right? Christianity's probably pretty good, right? No one can have an issue with that. And so what they have to do is like take a freaking swastika and put it behind her and just remind you like, hey, these things are associated. They're the same thing. It's the same thing they did with American History X. You know, the whole point of that movie was to take like normal ideas that have been around forever in America and it casts them into this guy who's like an open Nazi, like literal swastika tattoo on him. The whole movie is all about that. And then he realizes, because he like met a black guy who he was friends with, that actually he was just like captured by freaking hatred and everyone can just get along. And then like his brother gets killed by a black guy anyway at the end. And so anyway, I heard they were actually supposed to change that ending to like make him like go back to it. But then the director was like, no, we can't. We have to be like freaking Holden or whatever. So yeah, this type of media, you know, it wants to be transgressive so bad because like libtards exist in this perpetual state of thinking like offending the sensibilities of like white American Christians is the same thing as actually like, you know, being a revolutionary or whatever. So this kind of media to them is like catnip, where they think they're really, really speaking truth to power when they have Santa Claus. Get it? Get it? Like an icon of a children's like Christmas iteration, Santa, but he's killing Nazis. Even Santa knows we're supposed to do that. It's just like catnip, dude. They eat this stuff up and then literally having to spell it out for you with the swastika, with she's doing the Roman salute, while articulating like normal, either completely normal like American ideas or things that no one would ever say. Like, you know, Christmas must stay a white American Christian holiday. Nobody has ever said that ever. That woman saying that on screen was the first time anyone had spoken those words. Like, the point of Christmas is obviously the birth of the living God, the birth of our Savior. It has nothing to do with, you know, America even. Nothing to do with like race. It is specifically about that. But they have to make it about that to justify what they would really like, which is just further incitement of violence against normal white American Christians, which is why you have a woman who identifies as, hey, it's me, a white American Christian, and I'm also a Nazi, and now Santa's gonna put coal in my stocking, but like perhaps rather violently. I guess we'll find out. Play the clip.
No, we kill them all.
Whoa, hold on. Let's talk about this.
Nothing to talk about.
For Christ's sake, at least get a gun.
Guns are for pussies.
That even says it right there too. You know, I don't know the story. I'm not going to see this movie. Not even because it's like stupid politically, but just because they don't make good slashers anymore. The slashers they make nowadays are genuinely like sadistic, which I know that is a funny word to use on modern slashers rather than just like the genre itself. But the stuff like Terrifier, I mean, it's literally just like sadistic violence for the sake of violence. I actually find it to be offensive, and I usually don't like give a shit about stuff like that. But so I have no plans of seeing this movie, but you can even see in the commentary where he's like, well, come on, we can talk about like cool, reasonable black guy. And we could talk about this. It's like, no, there's nothing to talk about. What do you think that means? There's nothing to talk about, so just kill them. Does that ring any bells for you? Does that perhaps tie to real world events that we've been seeing play out in front of our very eyes, which are then again celebrated by these people? Do we think that's what's going on there, or is it just like random chat GPT dialogue? No, like these people know exactly what they're doing. And these are the people, by the way, who need to be put in jail. The FCC needs to go after these people. IRS needs to go after these people. You should not be able to do stuff like this, which is so obviously inciting and celebrating violence against American Christians. Like, sorry, that cannot be allowed. And by the way, if movies like this were being made by people and then, you know, the target instead of white American Christians were like, you know, gay people or troons or whatever, some protected class of the left, do you think those people would be allowed to air that media? Do you think that they would be allowed to just do that, get away with it, profit off it? Like, absolutely not. No, they would be investigated. They'd be shut down. They would never work again. So time to put the shoe on the other foot, I think. Okay, even the guns are for... Dude, it's so libtarded, it hurts me. I would rather take an axe to the face, like in Friday the 13th. Remember when that girl is like, I guess no one's in the shower. Just kidding, Mrs. Voorhees is in there. Now you have an axe in your face. I'd rather have that than the whole, like, no, guns are for pussy. Real men use an axe. It's so painfully Reddit. They are calling it the most Reddit media that has ever been brought to the screen. Again, now it is not about, like, it is so offensive to me that there is a case for self-defense being made. This media is so offensive that it makes me a danger to myself, which is to say that it makes my life under threat because it is so cringe. So in a way, these people need to be put in jail for like attempted murder, manslaughter, or something. It's so gay, dude. They're incapable. You know, they always say conservatives can't make culture. Touche. But when like liberals try to make like specifically like, you know, politically charged stuff, it never lands, dude. Like all of their best W's are things that were made by people who just thought they were making a movie. Maybe it's accidentally subversive. Maybe it's accidentally right wing or something. Every time anyone tries to make anything that's like specifically, you know, subversive or political in some way, it always just fails because the kinds of people who want to focus on that rather than like good storytelling are just like theater kids. They're Reddit tards. So yeah, enjoy your upvotes. Freaking guns are for pussies. Yet when like one of you guys uses them to kill one of our guys, now all of a sudden like guns are freaking epic. What was that one girl? Tell gun girl I said me too. You guys are so annoying. You're not cool. They're all like this, dude. They're all theater kids. Hassan Piker doing the like Chairman Mao Chinese shirt. You're like Turkish, dude. You are not Chinese. What are you doing? You idiot. Goes to China once. Wait, you can herd dogs here? Immediately dons the Chairman Mao outfit. Give me a break, dude. These people are so... If they were not so like cringe and gay, I would respect it a lot more. Like, if you're going to like threaten my life, threaten the lives of my friends, like I'm obviously not thrilled with that, but I'm not going to express annoyance with that. I'm going to be defensive. I'm going to feel threatened. Fight or flight's going to kick in. These people have a very unique ability of somehow conjuring annoyance as an emotion I experience when I'm having my life threatened, which is a very unique thing, perhaps even historically unprecedented, that they are so gay that they are able to make the people who they are trying to kill feel annoyed instead of just immediately like, you know, threatened, angry, agitated. Like somehow it is annoying. So congratulations, I guess. Anyway. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get you out of here. But before you go, be sure to go to Spotify, Apple, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a review. Leave us a 5-star review. Leave us your comments, your thoughts, all of that. And then got some other stuff coming up this week, which we will see you for. But in the meantime, yeah, thank you so much for watching. God bless you. God bless your family. I hope you are enjoying the Advent season. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Take care.